When I saw these articles you sent about the dock workers strike, I have to be honest, I pictured a bunch of milk crates and maybe a banana boat stuck out at sea.
Right.
But it turns out it was way more serious than that.
Yeah, for sure. It was
Yeah.
a really big deal. And I think one of the things that maybe wasn't obvious right away was just how widespread the impact could have been. We're not just talking about one port having some slowdowns. This was 14 different ports all the way from Maine down to Texas.
Okay, so not just my coffee supply being disrupted, but potentially the entire East Coast supply chain.
Exactly.
This is starting to feel less like a local news story and more like, a Tom Clancy novel.
It really was. And, the stakes are super high. We're talking about billions of dollars every single day that the economy would have taken a hit if those ports had shut down.
Wow.
And it wasn't just about that immediate financial impact, right?
Mm-hmm.
These articles, they all talked about how this could have caused this whole ripple effect, leading to shortages of, like you said, bananas and coffee, but also even big, important industrial stuff.
Right.
Imagine factories all over just can't get the parts they need. Everything grinds to a halt.
And, oh, man, don't even get me started on the holiday shopping nightmares. I can already see those headlines. Supply chain issues ruin Christmas.
Oh, for sure.
Okay. So before we get too far into, doomsday scenario land, let's back up a sec. Who are the main players in this whole thing? We've got the International Longshoremen's Association, the ILA representing, 45,000 dock workers or something like that?
Yeah, around there.
And then on the other side, we've got the U.S. Maritime Alliance, the USMX.
Right. And this is interesting, actually. The USMX, they actually represent foreign shipping lines, not just American companies, which I thought was interesting.
Oh, wow. See, I did not realize that.
Yeah, you don't always think about that, but it adds a whole other layer to this.
I know, right? So it's not just a simple labor dispute. You've got international relations caught up in all this too.
Absolutely.
And to add even more drama, this wasn't some new fight, right?
Yeah.
The ILA and the USMX, they haven't gone on strike since 1977?
77, yeah. So you can imagine the pressure.
Yeah. So let's get into it. What were the big issues at the table here? What were they actually fighting over?
Well, at the core of it, you had the big two, right? It always comes back to money and jobs. The ILA, they were originally asking for a huge raise, 77% over 6 years.
Whoa. Okay, 77%, that's a big jump. What was their reasoning behind that?
Well, everyone's feeling the pressure of inflation these days, right? But on top of that, they were saying their people already have to work insane hours, overtime on top of overtime, to make a decent living. So it wasn't just about the hourly rate, it was about the total hours they were putting in.
So they felt like they were already working more than they should have to just to make ends meet.
That's exactly.
Okay, so what did the USMX say to all that? I'm guessing they weren't jumping at that 77% right away?
Well, no. They came back with a counteroffer. Still substantial, but obviously much lower. Something around 50% over the same time frame.
Okay.
It's not totally clear what their reasoning was, at least not from these articles. But you can kind of connect the dots, right? They had to stay competitive with what other shipping companies are paying. And then there's this whole automation thing looming in the background.
Right. That was the other big one. Okay, so break that down for me. I get it. Automation, robots, all that. But what does it actually look like on the docks?
So basically think, instead of people driving forklifts and operating cranes, you've got automated machines doing it. And it's not just a few robots here and there. We're talking about self-driving vehicles all over the docks, these massive automated cranes, software that's managing the whole flow of cargo.
So, basically a total tech takeover. And the ILA was not on board with that, understandably.
Yeah. Can you imagine you've been doing this job for years, you've got skills, you've got experience, and suddenly you're being told a computer can do it better and faster.
That's got to be scary, yeah.
And to top it off, the ILA, they were pushing for a complete ban on all this new tech. Obviously, they wanted to protect their workers. But the USMX, they argued that they've got to be able to modernize to keep up with the rest of the world, right? Mm-hmm. Stay efficient to stay competitive.
So you've got this clash between, trying to keep costs down and stay competitive while also taking care of your workers who are worried about losing their jobs to robots.
Absolutely. It's a tough situation all around.
Yeah, no kidding. It's this perfect storm of economic pressures and technological change.
Yeah, and it's only going to get more intense, with automation and all that.
Right. So, okay, we're getting into the final days before this strike deadline. Things are getting pretty tense, right? What's the vibe like?
It was, everyone was on edge. The news, they're covering it nonstop.
Yeah.
Businesses are freaking out. It was like waiting for like a bomb to go off.
So did it feel like it was actually going to happen? Like, were they really about to shut everything down? Or were there signs of, like, progress behind the scenes?
Well, that's the thing, right? Even though they were like, publicly drawing lines in the sand, there were these little hints that maybe, just maybe, they were figuring some things out.
Okay, like what? Give me some hope here.
One of the articles, it mentioned that they'd actually exchanged new offers on the wages. So, not the original 77%, but still, they were at least talking numbers.
Okay, so there's that.
And then, get this, the USMX, they actually asked for more time.
Wait, hold on. The shipping companies asked for an extension. Like, they wanted to keep negotiating.
Yeah, which, I mean, think about it. Nobody wants to be the one who brings the whole economy to its knees right before the holidays.
Right. Talk about bad PR. Okay, that's interesting. So maybe that pressure, like the economic reality of it all, maybe that played a bigger role than we realized.
It had to have, right?
Okay, so what about Biden? What was the government doing about all this?
Well, the Biden administration, they were definitely keeping an eye on things, making statements, urging everyone to just work it out. But they never really got directly involved.
See, that's what I thought was interesting. You usually hear about, like, the government stepping in at the last minute with these things, trying to, like, force a deal or whatever.
Right, exactly. But this time, they kind of stayed on the sidelines.
I wonder why.
Maybe they figured it was better to let them, hash it out themselves without feeling like the government was breathing down their necks.
Yeah, could backfire, for sure. Okay, so the clock's ticking, deadline's approaching. Did they pull it off? Did they avoid the strike?
Well, from what I gathered from the articles, it seems like they did, at least for now.
At least for now. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so crisis averted, at least for now. But man, this whole thing really, exposed some vulnerabilities, don't you think? Like, what does this whole near miss tell us about, the future of work at the ports with automation and everything? Because that's not going away, right?
No, not a chance. This whole thing, it's like put a spotlight on that tension. The ILA wanting to just ban automation outright, that was never going to fly.
Yeah.
But it shows how important this is going to be going forward. And technology, it's not slowing down for anybody.
Right. So what do we do? How do you balance, progress and job security?
That is the question, isn't it? I mean, some of the articles, they talked about, retraining programs. So those workers, they can learn new skills, adapt to the changing industry.
Yeah, I saw that.
And maybe there's a way to, negotiate these deals where automation is phased in gradually, so it's not just, boom, overnight, everything's different.
Right, give people time to adjust. But that takes, cooperation, and long-term thinking, which, let's be real, not always easy in the middle of a fight like this.
No, for sure not.
This whole thing got me thinking. It really highlights how fragile, our entire system is. A few ports shut down and suddenly it's chaos. We saw it with the pandemic. Now we're seeing it again. It makes you wonder about, how we build a system that's, tougher, more resilient.
Right, exactly. Maybe we need to diversify where our stuff comes from so we're not so reliant on just a handful of ports, or rethink this whole just-in-time inventory thing.
Yeah, having some backup options, right?
Exactly. And this is where it gets interesting, right? Remember that thing about foreign ships not being able to move stuff between U.S. cities?
Oh, right, the Jones Act. Yeah, that's the one, where it's actually cheaper to, ship stuff between U.S. ports on a foreign ship. But it's illegal, that one.
That's the one. 100 years old. That law, and it's supposed to protect American shipping, but some people say it actually does the opposite, that it makes things more expensive and creates bottlenecks.
Okay, so how does that tie into, the dock workers and the strike threat?
Well, think about it. If we could use those foreign ships domestically, we'd have more options, right? So if there's a problem at one port, you just reroute stuff. It's like if you're stuck in traffic, it would be nice to have an alternate route, right?
Right. Okay. So the Jones Act, it might not just be about costs. It could be about our ability to handle these kind of disruptions.
Exactly. Like I said, it's a complex issue, but something to think about for sure.
Wow. Okay. So we went from milk crates and bananas to global supply chains and century-old maritime laws. Who knew?
That's the fun of it, right? You never know what you'll uncover when you start digging.
That's for sure. Well, I think we've officially reached the bottom of this deep dive. Thanks so much for, guiding us through all of this.
Happy to do it.
And to everyone listening, keep those articles coming because you never know what we'll find next time.